Hello everyone. Welcome to my podcast of Creative Picks, and right now we are looking at unsolved mysteries in the world. As we know, there are a lot of unsolved mysteries in this world, and today, particularly, I am talking about the infamous serial killer who terrorized London in the 1800s, Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper was an unidentified serial killer active in around uh, Whitechapel, a district of London, in 1888. In both criminal case files and the contemporaneous journalist accounts, the killer was also called the Whitechapel Murderer and Leather Apron. So, why did he get this name? The attacks ascribed to the Jack the Ripper typically involved women working as prostitutes who lived and worked in the slums of East End of London. So their throats were cut prior to abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least three of the victims led to the speculation that their killer had some anatomical or surgical knowledge. Rumors that the murders were connected intensified in September and October 1888. The numerous letters were received by media outlets and Scotland Yard from individuals supporting to be the murderer. The name Jack the Ripper originated in the Dear Boss letter written by an individual claiming to be the murderer, which was decimated in the press. The letter is widely believed to have been a hoax and may have been written by journalists to heighten interest in the story and increase their newspaper's circulation. The From Hell letter received by George Lusk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee came with half of a preserved human kidney purportedly taken off one of the victims. The public came increasingly to believe in the existence of a single serial killer known as Jack the Ripper. Many because of both the extraordinary brutal nature of the murders and media coverage of the crimes. Extensive newspaper coverages were given and widespread and enduring international notoriety on the Ripper, and the legend solidified. So the police did investigate back in the 1800s, and a series of 11 brutal murders were committed in the Whitechapel and Spitalfields between 1888 and 1891, but was unable to connect all the killings conclusively to the murders of 1888. Five victims, Mary Ann Nicholas, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, are known as the Chronicle Five, and their murders between 31st August and November 9th, 1888 are often considered the most likely to be linked to the murders. The murders were never solved, and the legend surrounding these crimes became a combination of historical research, folklore, and pseudotary, capturing public imagination to the present day. So why was these murders committed? There's no conclusive evidence that why these murders were committed. There's no very giving evidence that these murders were committed for a particular reason. The only reason we have this Jack the Ripper targeted only prostitutes who were working as sex workers in the Whitechapel area in East End of London. So the savagery of a tribal murder lack an obvious motive, and the closeness of the location, date, and later the Chronicle Ripper murders led to the police link the murders later committed by Jack the Ripper. So why was it never solved? Because police did come to a few shortlisted candidates telling that they might be, and they even released a sketch to the public stating that this might be the Jack the Ripper, and they had arrested few people who thought they were Jack the Ripper. So what happened in the investigation? So the vast majority of the City of London police files relating to the investigation to the Whitechapel murders were destroyed in a blitz. So the whole files which they had collected were destroyed in a blitz. So the surviving metropolitan files allow a detailed view of the investigative procedures in the Victorian era. So a large team of policemen conducted house-to-house inquiries throughout the Whitechapel district. So forensic materials were collected and examined, suspects were identified, traced, and either examined more closely or eliminated from the inquiry. Modern police works follows the same pattern, but back then more than 2000 people were interviewed. So back then we didn't have the technology or any equipment that can help us shortlist the candidates or get closer to the criminal, but they did interviewed more than 2000 people back in the day. So upwards of 300 people were investigated and 80 people were detained out of that. Following the murders of Stride and Eddowes, the commissioner of the city police, Sir James Fraser, at that time, he offered a reward of £500 to the arrest of Jack the Ripper. So the investigation was initially conducted by the Metropolitan Police of Whitechapel, H Division, Criminal Investigation Department, or known as CID back then, headed by Detective Inspector Edmund Reed. So after the murders of Nichols and Detective Inspectors Frederick Abernine, Henry Moore, and Walter Andrews were sent from Central Office to Scotland Yard to assist. The City of London Police were involved under Detective Inspector James McWilliam after the Eddowes murder, which occurred within the City of London. The overall direction of the murders enquiries was hampered by the fact that the newly appointed head of the CID, Robert Anderson, was on leave in Switzerland between 7th September and 6th October, during the time when Chapman, Stride, and Eddowes were killed. The prompted Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren to support Chief Inspector Donald Swanson to coordinate the inquiry from the Scotland Yard. So, who were all interviewed or investigated according to this? So, the butchers, slaughterers, surgeons, and physicians were suspected because of the manner the mutilations were done on the body or the way the murder was conducted. A surviving note from a Major Henry Smith, acting commissioner of the city police, indicates that the alibis of local butchers and slaughterers were investigated. So, with the result that they were eliminated from the inquiry, a report from Inspector Swanson to the Home Office confirms that 76 butchers and slaughterers were visited and investigated, and they were interviewed. And the inquiry encompassed all their employees of the previous 6 months. So, some contemporaneous figures, including Queen Victoria, thought the pattern of the murders indicated that the culprit was a butcher or a cattle drover. On one of the cattle boats that piled between London and mainland Europe, Whitechapel was close to the London docks, and usually such boats docked on Thursday or Friday back in the day and departed on a Saturday or a Sunday. So the cattle boats were examined, but the dates of the murders did not coincide with the single boats. Movement and the transfer of the crewmen between boats was also ruled out. So, guys, even now there is quite a bit of mystery, like who the Jack the Ripper is. So he had written 4 letters were sent to the police via the press, stating that they are the Jack the Ripper. So the letters are quite popular. You can find it online. So the letters are known as Dear Boss letter, Saucy Jackie letter, and From Hell, and Openshaw. So these letters were sent to the police, the newspapers, and they had received other individual hundreds of letters regarding the case. So some letters were well-intentioned offers of the advice as how to catch the killer, but the mass majority was either hoaxes or generally useless. But these 4 letters stand out with the police. So the Dear Boss letter, dated 25th September and postmarked 27th September 1888, was received that day by the Central News Agency. And Saucy Jackie postcard was postmarked 1st October 1888 and was received on the same day by the Central News Agency. And the From Hell letter was received by George Lusk, leader of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, on 16th October 1888. However, the handwriting was similar to the Dear Boss letter, the Saucy Jackie letter, and mentioned that the canonical murders committed on 30th September, which the author refers to by writing double event this time. So we have to notice that. And the From Hell letter was also received by George Lusk. And Scotland Yard published so many letters, and they even published the Boss letter and the postcard on 3rd October in the ultimately vain hope that the member of the public would recognize the handwriting. So I would say there's a legacy right now regarding Jack the Ripper. The nature of the Ripper murders and the improvised lifestyle of the victims drew attention to the poor living conditions in the East End of London. So the galvanized public opinion against the overcrowded, insanitary slums were brought to attention, and for many years, the Ten Bells public house in the commercial street was the focus of such tours. In the immediate aftermath of the murders, and later Jack the Ripper became the children's boogeyman, deceptions were often phantomistics or monsters. So I would just like to see what are your thoughts on Jack the Ripper, guys. So do let me know on this podcast. So just let me know if you have any uh, issues related with the Jack the Ripper, because this is really not a good thing, that keeping an murderer unsolved for so many times. And I think this is really a good sign telling people that we have to look into this, and we have to study people, why they turn into the murderers or serial killers as possible. So thank you for watching this podcast, and I really like if you can subscribe to my channel and support me so that I can make good contents like this more and more. Thank you.